Welcome back, everybody, to this Psychogenic Symposium, as we are back with Tamwin, our guest. Say hi, Tamwin.
Hello, hello, hello.
Awesome, and Will,
Hey, hi, howdy.
and we're excited to see what we've each made. Uh, so yeah, I figure we should just go straight into it, right?
All right.
Okay. So Tamwin, I believe. Actually, you want to say the prompt, Will?
Oh,
Since you give it.
Tamwin's prompt? Yes, give me a second. Yeah, Tamwin, I believe I gave you the prompt where no light can reach you.
Indeed, you did. And what I've created from that is a new domain for the conduit,
Ooh.
the domain of darkness,
Yes.
It's fun.
which is right here.
Oh wow, properly formatted and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I've got a single format that I just rewrite everything in.
Still,
Um, yeah.
wow. So why did you choose the darkness domain from that prompt, Tamwin?
Well, I'll be honest. A lot of it has to do with the types of design and work I've been doing so far in Draw Steel. I
Mhm.
haven't I haven't been directing any campaign. So I haven't really felt the need to dive into making custom like monsters or adventures or stuff. Most of my design work has been entirely on the sort of player facing side of things. And darkness and night, which are two, similar but separate things, are both like sort of concepts that are missing from the conduit. The closest you get is the trickery domain, and I figured that was a void that could be filled.
Yeah, no, this is but from initial looks here, right? Without going into mechanics,
Mm-hmm.
it looks really good. So do you want to walk us through sort of like this class, sort of level by level, and like so your thought process through it?
Yeah. So, in terms of like sort of first level, you get your piety generation. I chose a Bane or double Bane because that's unrepresented at Conduit, and one of the ways you are applying Banes is generally via the weaken condition, or when creatures are being attacked who have cover or concealment, which sort of gives darknessy vibes to me. And then for the prayer effect, I have it just create a cloud of darkness because it's both useful and sort of straight on the tin, and
Yeah.
I find it useful for the prayer effects to be like very, what's the word, like not pinnacle, but like I guess signature to what that domain should represent.
Mhm. Yep.
Um,
But it also seems to match sort of the theme of like usually a lot of the domain effects kind of affect the battlefield in some way. At least like
mhm,
creation I know does, and there's like a few others who do that, and so it's sort of like building on top of that sort of theme.
yeah, and I also wanted to avoid too much overlap with trickery, which is the other, which is as a can have similar, I guess, mechanical effects connected to their sort of theming. And trickery specifically is a big slide. So I figured leaning into a different aspect of it helps differentiate them. Then at for their first level domain feature, they get Darkness, My Old Friend, which makes it so you no longer require light to see, and whenever you're in darkness, you hear faint whispers warning you of nearby dangers or guiding you to potential opportunities.
I really like that. I like abilities that
Mm-hmm.
leave it open for Jim to do a little bit more with it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just I think if I'm not wrong, I see it as like a pretty like I see it as a theming in a lot of your work. At least whenever I look at the Gunslinger, had some abilities like that.
Yeah.
Good.
Actually, so you have a specific individual to thank for that. Ashley, they're somewhat active on the Patreon side of things, or at least they like in the Patreon chats and stuff, or at least they were earlier on in Draw Steel development. Um, and they have a fervent passion, a crusade even against effects that are just you gain an edge.
Yep.
It's fair.
And they're like, for example, the sheriffs, the way I see it happened, originally was just basically like, yeah, you gain an edge when you attempt to discover clues and to convince people of things that you've discovered. And they said, hey, look, fam, you can do better than that. And, they convinced me, so I did. And I could. And because you mentioned that as one of your favorite abilities from the class. So yeah, so
awesome.
in my work, I do my best to avoid, I guess a boring incentive is the best way of putting it.
Hmm.
So
I totally agree.
minimizing. Do you have any more thoughts at the first level?
Oh, no. Well, at least not with that. Yeah, no, I don't. Well, actually,
All right.
I do. Sorry. Mentally, like, you wrote this sort of. There's obviously some sort of implied fiction here about like some sort of like entity, like in your mind. Is this? Do you have a thing in mind for this to represent? Like, is it like an elemental sort of like of darkness? Is it? Do you have anything in mind, or is it just supposed to be very mysterious by design without you really having given it any thought?
Well, this is for the conduit. So it's specifically a deity whose domain encompasses darkness, and that might be, a goddess of the night type deal. It might be a subterranean, like, lord of the underworld. It might be some unspeakable horror from the abyssal depths of the ocean.
Cool.
Or it might, like, there are a lot of I guess, like, sort of godly portfolios that can include darkness as a concept. And I wanted to do my best to both, get some nice juicy flavor without limiting it to only apply to one of them.
Yeah, I think it'd be really fun to play a Twilight, or rather a Equinox elf, like a darkness and a portfolio conduit. That'd be fun.
That would be cool.
Yeah. Or you could really go for Twilight and take darkness and sun as your two domains.
That would be
yeah.
really cool. Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah, that would be really fun.
I love that. I will say it's a really good. If someone reads your thing and is like instantly is like, I can do this, this, and this, that's always a great sign. And legitimately, I think when designing Draw Steel, the thing people should have in mind is to make it cool. Like, to make it, when you read it, make it so like you want to be able to do that, right? And I think that's something. And I think it's just a really important thing to keep in mind. I think you nail it. That's all I have for level 1.
Yeah. No, the conduit, because their subclasses are split in half, that means sort of like each half of it is a little less meaty than a normal subclass, and that's part of the reason why I specifically chose a conduit domain over some other class. Was because there's a little less there. But at second level, they get a 5-cost ability they can use. In this case, even the stars turn their gaze, which allows you to cloak an ally in shadow, making them be concealed and allowing them to hide for free on each of their turns, and giving them a bonus surge when they do that.
Awesome.
It's
Good name.
Cool. Yeah, I love that name.
I was, like I said, I was trying to stay away from like specific like night theming, but I came up with that name and it was just like, nope, that has to go in there.
That's fair. That's fair.
Then at 4th level, they get another domain feature, Snuff Out. As a maneuver, you can extinguish any number of light sources that you can see. And if the light source is like intrinsic to the object, such as a bioluminescent creature or magical glowing thing, then it will remain dark until exposed to the light of dawn.
I really like the remaining dark until exposed to the light of dawn. That's fun. It's much more
really evocative.
Yes. It's one of the problems I've always had with like D&D-esque darkness and like snuffing out, especially when you're like using it to like say counter a light item is like the solution to that is just walk out of the dark area. And it's like, okay, I get from like a game design purpose why you might have done that, but I think this is way cooler to have like a thing they have to do to break it.
Mhm. Yeah, no, to sort of like walk you through this process. When I originally came up with the idea, the sort of like the first immediate mechanic that popped in my head was like, as a maneuver, snuff out a light source, right? But then I'm like, nah, like this is draw steel. I gotta make it cool. So, like, obviously, instead of being like, oh, it remains dark for 1 hour or remains dark for a day, I'm like, okay, first of all, like the light of dawn, but specifically being exposed to the light of dawn rather than just until the next dawn. And part of the reason I did that was if players wanted to be creative with like extinguishing the light of something they had, like like part of their own equipment or gear or an item, so that they could prevent the darkening of it from being lost. And then instead of just being one light source, it's any number. You can see them, they go out.
That is really good. Just I do
almost
love.
imagine.
Oh, go ahead.
I imagine imagine like a knight like cleric or conduit looking over capital, and suddenly, boom, like no light. I don't know. That image is really cool.
I do really like it. I love features that just let you like you do this thing. Just like that's the feature is just
Yeah.
you do this thing. And it's like there's no role involved, there's no nothing. It's just really cool. You can just do a thing.
Moving on up to 6th level, we get another domain ability, this time Fear the Unseen, where you, it's a single target attack, you deal some damage, you impose a frightened potentially, and the target of the fear is one of your allies, who becomes invisible and hidden.
Oh. Okay.
Which is kind of interesting because by making the target of the fear hidden, it in some ways makes the frightened condition a lot less impactful.
Right.
Because you no longer have the movement restriction, which is the main thing about frightened. But then that also sort of frees up power budget in the ability itself, and then also like gives the players some way of interacting with it, right? Where now there's a question of like, the turn timing matters. The like, is there a way to give this ally actions off their turn to sort of break the stealth earlier? Just makes the ability, gives the ability a little more crunch, a little more engagement.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I think for a lot of combat abilities, another good yardstick to use is to be like, whenever you use it, does it make sense in your head, and is it dramatic? I see some ahead, and I think it's pretty dramatic. So awesome.
7th level, they get another feature, a Shroud of Umbral Silence. Shadows cling to your form, and you make no noise when moving unless you choose to. You always have concealment and can sneak at full speed. Additionally, whenever you allow yourself or an ally to spend a recovery, they can use the hide maneuver even if they are observed.
Nice. I like that. I like the.
This one's a bit.
Go ahead.
No, keep going about what you like about this before I delve into it.
I like the allowing yourself or an ally to hide, even if they're observed when you give them or yourself a recovery. I think that's really fun, and it's really flavorful. I can kind of imagine, especially like Shroud of Umbral Silence being the name. I can almost imagine a conduit who goes for this darkness domain as one of their domains, healing their ally through this magic, and these like wisps of darkness both like come into their wounds and knit them together, but also like begin like wrapping around their ally, and I think that's really fun.
I think tying sort of the themes of darkness back into the fact that they're a healer, right? Like no matter what, all the cons are sort of in a way a healer. tying it back to that fantasy in itself, I think is also a good idea. Because I think, yeah, this is really good. I think because when I first read it, I didn't even like connect it to it being a conduit. Because like for example, like whenever the first ability, I didn't even like think of it being a conduit. I was like, oh, it feels like because this is almost like a subclass or a domain for a conduit who wants to be basically a shadow, right? Um, and so but I like how this ability specifically is like ties back into the idea of it still being a conduit. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, so specifically about that like sort of first ability for a conduit who wants to be a shadow doesn't quite work because the target of that first ability has to be an ally. You can't cast it on yourself.
Oh.
So yeah, so it's sort of more build your own shadow. Though I will know it was all I specifically designed it to synergize well with the shadows that sort of game style. They really like it gaining surges, and shadows can generally only hide once, and so basically often you have a dilemma of, do I hide before my attack to gain an edge on the attack but then lose it, or do I hide after my attack such that I'm hidden during like the rest of the round? And so giving them the second stealth allows them to have their cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
But going back to the 7th level feature here, having the this is definitely a bit more of a mechanical focused ability, especially considering neither of their first two domain features have a direct in combat benefit, and 7th level features for the conduit generally tend to be a powerful effect. Most of them are combat benefits, though not all. I know like the knowledge domain has a feature where just you no longer need project sources for your research because you have access to like all the knowledge of your god if you pray. But yeah, so definitely aiming for a powerful effect, and like you mentioned, sort of tying it back into that core conduit fantasy of being a healer, of helping your allies, and linking the two of those together.
It's yeah. Also, I think is also useful like out of combat, right? Like the whole idea of like stealth and sneaking, like, and I think it's also pretty useful out of combat. So yeah, good.
And then finally, your 9th level, your ultimate ability, Alone in the Dark, where you select a creature, you deal some damage, and the target loses line of effect beyond a couple of squares, and they cannot be affected by their allies.
Ooh.
I really love this ability. I
Really
think
good.
it gives the fantasy of you make this chooses one dude and just like isolate him. Like even in a battlefield full of combat, you isolate him, and that's really cool. That's rad.
That is really fun.
One of the things I really like about designing the 11 cost abilities is just you get to put on these really powerful effects. Delving a little into the sort of more general design thing, one of the things I sort of like, this is a lesson I learned when designing stuff for Draw Steel, is that the sort of the power curve isn't a linear line. Because like a 10 cost ability isn't twice as strong as a 5 cost ability, because if you have the choice between using like across 2 turns using a 5 cost ability on each turn, or having to use only a signature the first turn, then a 10 cost or an 11 cost the second, the opportunity cost of having waited that extra turn, having to have saved up, is significant.
Right.
And so that means that the abilities, there's sort of an exponential curve to how much power an ability actually needs to have in order for that decision to be of like a proper balance, to keep the tactical nature of the game. And so what that means is 11 cost abilities can do some crazy stuff. And like notably, this condition, this isn't tied to a potency. It just happens.
Yeah. Wow. That is very right. It's very high level, right? But it's also very
Yeah.
very cool.
I mean, I've already thrown out there that I
Um,
love abilities that just do a thing.
Yeah.
yeah.
And I love.
So
Sorry, go ahead.
no, you're loving something. Go for it.
I love not having line of effect. I'm curious, what made you choose 2 squares specifically? Why not 1 square or 3 squares?
So the reason I choose 2 squares instead of 1 square is such that a ranged creature wasn't forced into having to take a bane from enemies standing next to them.
Okay, that, that makes
Because when
sense.
you make it melee, um, otherwise I would have done 1 square. Like I wanted it to be very isolating, very limiting.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah.
This is really good. I whenever I'm designing stuff, my go-to is I
Mhm.
imagine it sort of being used as Ajax. I don't know why. I think because that's
Mhm.
almost the pinnacle of almost like the end game of draw skill for a lot of like sort of campaigns.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's really good ability.
it is.
Um, you could really see. I'll say you could really see that you've been consistently designing subclasses for a while now. Because this
Mhm.
subclass, I can imagine an official product and not like bat an eye, right? If it was just like in a scan, like if it was in the base book, I wouldn't bat an eye. But I think it'd be like it'd probably be like one of the best, better designed like subclasses legitimately. And it's really good.
I'm really happy to hear that praise. That's sort of what I aim to achieve when I make this stuff.
Yeah, no, it definitely achieved it. It's really good.
Yeah, I agree. It is. I was shocked when I opened this document. Honestly, I I
I
yeah, I was blown away. Absolutely blown away.
No, not to give too much praise, but I think legitimately you may be one of the best designers of subclasses that exist currently for draw skill.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, that's
it's just they're all really
so
good.
that's
I
consequence of just getting in
Yeah.
on the early end of things. Like I
Mhm.
mentioned before, I've been designing stuff for Draw Steel since before the rules have hammered down, and several times I've had my feet swept out from underneath me when like core mechanics changed. Like when they introduced the power roll, that was a whole lot of work that I just Command A
Yeah.
delete. Um, but there's definitely
Really
some
tell.
it's such a fun system to design for, so I
Mhm.
just can't stop myself.
No, it is, and yeah, I think it's a really good example of what you do in a system and it's the coolness like you could achieve. So yeah, really good job. Um, Also, again, look in the description. You will find a link to these individual projects. So if you use it, also let us know. Like if you end up using the darkness domain, let us know. Again, I think it's a pretty
Yeah,
universal
for
domain too.
sure.
It's not like anything too niche, right? Like I imagine a lot of
Mhm.
characters who would use darkness as a domain.
Yeah.
So awesome, yeah. So do you have any other like last, or I guess, oh, a question actually we always ask usually
Mhm.
is if you were to
Mhm.
expand this, like how would you, if you would expand it? Because this feels pretty complete as is, unless you have anything in mind.
Well, so sort of a product line that I know I'm planning on developing at some point in the future, not near term, is basically making like a class expansion pack. And what this would be is it would be a set of subclasses and then also some alternate core features. So, like for example, at third level, the conduit gets an ability that lets them resurrect people. And what if you feel like playing in a campaign where resurrection isn't accessible? Well, this would be an alternate ability. It would have alternate core class abilities, so you can choose one, and it might be a matter of like campaign preference, like with resurrection, or it might just be I think this sounds cooler. And then also a packet of subclasses of which the darkness domain would be one of them.
Awesome. Do you think you're gonna add this to that product? That'd be really cool to hear
Ah,
if you do.
oh no, yeah, for sure. Like I made this and I go,
Awesome.
damn, I'm happy with what I made. So I definitely
Yeah.
want to get that out to people.
This is, I'm not just now rather than later, but I think a big thing about this podcast that we're trying to show is how
Mhm.
just sitting down and getting something done, even if not the most refined, is such a useful tool in design. Even if it's just like a half finish or whatever. And sort of, again, I imagine the way we've done things here is very different from what you're used to, right? Like timed with a specific prompt. I'm curious, like, what was your thought process like? Like, did you enjoy this process, or did you think like it was too restrictive?
I enjoyed it for sure. I definitely. I mean, I like. It feels like most people on the internet have a problem with procrastination. So having the sort of the time limit of like I need to get this done before the next episode of the podcast, in some ways is like painful in that like I need to actually do it. But in other ways, having a time limit means it actually gets done.
Right.
Exactly.
So
that's what I found. And I wouldn't have gotten like any of these things done with this podcast if it wasn't in this podcast, right? And I think it's just really impressive, like what you can get done if you just have something to push you and motivate you.
Yeah.
And I suggest other people to do something similar with their stuff.
I agree. Yeah, just having something. I might have made some of the other stuff we made for this podcast just like on a whim about, like things I thought sounded cool. But especially this prompt, I never would have made anything for Cozy Fantasy, even if I thought it sounded cool. I would have kept like walking away from it.
I can't wait to see what you've done, Will, but I really want to go next because I think also mine, it doesn't mesh with Tamwin, but I feel like it's also, it's very similar vein of what we did, like choose the design for.
Yeah.
So Tamwin, what was my prompt?
So your prompt was, Mom says it's my turn to have the brain cell.
Yes. I will say, I did take that and do something weird with it. Quick warning, trigger warning. There is some mind control, domination sort of themes within what I made. So if you can't handle that, or rather, if that's not your thing, feel free. We'll probably add a timestamp right here. Skip to, and so you could go on to Will's project, which I'm sure, being Cozy Fantasy, isn't horrific. So I made a subclass. I made the Furta path. How I made that name is basically the Latin term for stealing or thief or something is, I think, Furta something. So I basically use that as a prefix, and this whole subclass is around the idea of a subset of a telepath who their whole thing is controlling others, dominating. This is not a heroic subclass. Midway through designing, I was like, this is not heroic, but it exists, right? So hearing Mom said this is my turn to have the brain cell, I didn't know what to do with that. I really didn't. I was like, I could do like the multi sort of like figure like goblin thing, but I've seen many people do that sort of thing, and I really didn't want to add to that. So I was thinking, sure, it's my turn to use the brain cell, but what if it's like, I'm gonna use your brain cells. I'm gonna mentally like basically use your brains like brain by force, right? So I was kind of that's what I'm inspired by in regards to that. And then I started designing it today, really. And it's a sub-petition of telepathy, which means I didn't design any of the abilities, aka like whenever it gives you like a choice of 2 abilities for a school of telepathy, because since it's a sort of subtype of telepathy, you just choose from that list. Although if I were to expand upon it, I would give one additional option for that was specifically for that subclass. Because a lot of the telepathy abilities also kind of somewhat fit that fantasy a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So for our first level, I gave them the maneuver on one's sword, which basically lets you cause a target to deal the free strike damage plus your reason score to themselves. Or if you spend 2 clarity, you can instead make them target another creature, and in that case, they basically use up their triggered action.
Oh, okay.
That's how I sort of had that in mind. Also, as a note, this is not balanced. I'm sure it's not. I probably need to play test to get that. Again, this is my first time really designing. Well, not my first time. This is one of my first times designing a subclass. So I'm still trying to learn the wheels for that specifically. That's sort of layer of design. Next, I have 1 wrong step. Before they know it, they're running the wrong way. Which basically, as a triggered action, if a target moves, you could instead choose to move them up to half their speed, and then they use up their movement, right? So they come towards you. Nope, you're the other way. Right, and they probably so they come to like really confused. I'm like, what just happened?
I mean, that sounds more like 7 to 8 wrong steps than just 1, if you ask me.
Yep, totally. So those 2 abilities, I wanted to give my whole main sort of thing. I wanted to give the idea of, hey, you are having them do stuff, also using up the resources in the process, right? Like if you have a ogre come towards you, they move away and they use your movement, right? Oh, they attack their ally and don't have triggered action. It kind of like helps. So they're probably really good versus solos, I imagine. And maybe not as much versus like minions and such, but they're sort of. I guess the way they're designed, so almost like makes them better at specific encounters, which I guess isn't unique, right? There's plenty of classes that do that, but I think specifically this class is really good against solos and also like big creatures you could kind of sort of expend their stuff. So for a second level ability, so for all the talent subclasses, the ability has a very similar naming convention. So for this one, I did ease their will, which is almost sort of their trademark ability, which is weird to put, I think, in this tier of leveling up, because I don't think any of the other talent subclasses do that, right? Because this ability is meant to almost like, it's not a combat ability, but it's supposed to sort of fill the fantasy while not in combat, from what I could tell. Maybe give some combat sort of capabilities. So what I did is I made it so they have an ability basically to dominate, like bend the will of weak-willed creatures. Which, in my mind, this was basically creatures who are lower level than you, because all enemies have a level to them.
Right.
Additionally, you communicate telepathically, and they follow any non-violent mental order. And if any violence occurs at all, like if the first thing that happens when you encounter them is they fight you, then you can't do it. We have to almost have like the upper hand to start with. So that's kind of where the sort of that limiting factor is, right? Like let's say if you have a meeting with Bargnot, right, the Goblin Queen, and you're like, I'm gonna dominate them. Cool, awesome, and you can keep that up, right, for however long you're sitting nearby. But the minute that one of the goblins is like something's off here and like goes like to pull a sword or do any violent action, and that point it breaks. Because I almost imagine in fiction there's almost like a violence itself almost causes like a higher wall of defense to mental like a mental domination, right? Is my sort of justification.
I'm getting some Grima worm tongue out of this ability.
I've never seen Game of Thrones, or is that Game of Thrones, right?
No,
that's
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings. I am a nerd exile now, I think.
Yeah, we are gonna have to exile. I'm sorry, after the podcast is over.
Listen,
I've never podcast too, but
but I've never watched Lord of the Rings movies, and I've never read the books. I read The Hobbit, I like that, but never Lord of the Rings.
See, my
I do have a whole set of.
I think The Hobbit's just better than the Lord of the Rings trilogy. But
I could tell I agree. I like how more like shorter is okay, but
okay, we can be exiled.
Welcome to the Hobbit part of our podcast. To the Hobbit part of our podcast.
Right.
Yeah, but I really wanted to give the idea of like, hey, you took this class to dominate people, right? Subclass. You should be able to do that at low levels, right? Even if there's a really big limitation to it, this is very useful, right? Like as an ability, kind of gives that fantasy.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Next is for fifth level tradition feature. I have You Are Me, which when you act, you can choose to use your action maneuver and triggered actions as if you were in a space with another creature within 15 squares. Basically, it's the idea of like your eyes go dark, and suddenly the goblin out of nowhere uses psychic powers, right? And like where did that come from? Basically, use like a conduit, like using it as a conduit to use your stuff. Or hey, I'm gonna have this goblin use the heal action on my friend, right? Or something like that. But like you're able to use your abilities through these NPCs, and like I'm gonna have this goblin. I'm gonna use my I'm gonna use 8 attack through this goblin. And it's just gonna add to that fantasy, right? It doesn't at first. I think it doesn't feel like it's just basically extending your range, but in the fiction, it's also very like adds to like the fantasy.
Yeah.
Next, I was a big fan of this one actually. Your beliefs aren't your own. I love this ability. Where basically, once in a negotiation, you may treat any argument as a motivation. As long as you don't get a tier 1 result, and you remain within 10 miles of the figure, the target beliefs are altered to align with your argument. Right?
Oh, that's really cool.
So if you're meeting with the king, and you're like, hey, I think, like, and you make the argument of like, hey, Like, let's imagine their pitfall is literally they're not bloodthirsty, but you make an argument that hey, you'll see their blood spill, and like you succeed, and it becomes a motivation, and you succeed on that. That while you're near them, they now have a bloodlust, right? I think it's really fun because it brings the repercussions of the motivation outside of the motivation itself, which I really like.
For sure.
I imagine that Jafar has similar abilities, right? Like, have you seen Aladdin, both of you?
Yes.
How Jafar's almost like the vizier who kind of like controls the sort of king. And this is a very sort of king controlling ability, right? Imagine there's like a few of these guys out in the world, NPC version of these guys, that are just like in the back, just like changing the motivations of the king or like of some sort of like important figures, right? Which I kind of think this is kind of a class, like I feel like this would work better as a NPC or something, or like a monster stat block, because again, it's not really heroic, but I think it does fit the fantasy of what you do if you were to play like a campaign as sort of villains, right?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Or as anti-heroes.
I think something to sort of remember about when Drostiel is talking about being heroes, it can mean heroes in the Greek sense, where they're not always good people, but they're always great people, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
So I can definitely see a campaign where may not have good intentions, but you're still not, fiddling over how many coppers you loot from a goblin's corpse.
That's fair, because I remember whenever they first started talking about Drostiel, one of the examples they gave was Dragonlance, and how one of the characters in that wasn't good, but he was working towards good actions for or doing something good for the wrong reasons, right? And I think that's definitely something like a figure, like having one, like I think it'd be really fun to play one of these, and like with the end goal of dominating Ajax, right? I think it'd be really fun.
Oh, that would be cool.
Speaking of which, we're gonna go to their 8th level abilities, which actually help with this.
Oh, okay.
Now, when you use Ease Your Will, you could affect a number of targets equal to twice your level, right? So now it's not just one target; it's
16.
at this point 16. Yes. So a whole goblin tribe, you got it, right? And then Full Control, the last ability they get, which is, I imagine this is sort of the Ajax controlling ability. You gain the ability to fully mentally dominate any creature with enough time. You learn the Dominate Downtime Project. This downtime project can be done without the target knowing. It's like if you meet the king every day, right? You just like do a few like some faint magics, right? And eventually you're dominated. So how it works is the item prerequisite is an object of extreme emotional significance to the target, right? Which is I imagine you'd like sort of know the target before you like have that, right? Project source, none. Reason or intuition characteristic. Basically, it's you decide to gain full mental control of a creature. You must be able to get into close proximity to the creature to undertake this project. When you complete the project, the target becomes a retainer. This doesn't add to your maximum number of retainers. Project goal is 250 per level of the target, right? So for like a 10th level creature, it'd be 2,500, I think, which is a fair bit. I think not as much as technically an airship, but it also requires much more sort of you really get into like close proximity of them, right? Captured or in secret. There's some like in narrative sort of hurdles to get there.
Yeah, that's fun.
So yeah, that is the last ability they get as the first up half. Yeah, that's what I bring to the podcast.
So I just want to say I am on one sword. That like base effect, chef's kiss, perfect. Mwah. I love it.
Thank you.
It's just like I can sort of it's simple mechanically while still like perfectly encapsulating the fantasy of this. I also found it very interesting the sort of leaning on specifically like the thief aspect, where you're not just using your opponents, you're stealing stuff from them. With using their triggered action, using up their movement. And like I find it kind of interesting because like I'm wondering if like it's possible to carry those themes into the sort of higher level abilities. You're allowing them to use the telepathy abilities, but I definitely think things like that could definitely be expanded on and have other stuff, like especially at higher levels, just to steal the director's malice. Yeah, this is
Oh,
my
that would be really
resources
cool.
now.
That's really good. That's really good. Yeah, no, if I expand on that, I'll definitely I steal that. That's really, really cool. Um, yeah. No, I'm very. I think it's good. Again, I'm not sure if it's balanced, right? Because it's hard to balance like mind control as an ability,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I haven't really played much high level draw steel. I've only really played low level. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you've played a fair bit of. I know you playtest a fair bit, Tamwin. Have you playtested a lot of high level draw steel?
I mean, I wouldn't say I've playtested a lot of high level draw steel, but I have fought and died to Ajax. Done some other stuff. I think honestly, like most of the sort of whatchamacallit, like the quote unquote balance concerns are just gonna come from like the narrative impact of being able to control creatures, right?
Yeah.
Just like
Mhm.
what is being able to, like okay, maybe yeah, you can't take over the king, but like, his, like his most trusted servant that you just take over,
Right.
who knows all his
I,
secrets, right?
I'm kind of putting all the balance in the director's hands because I imagine it's going to be
Mhm.
a rare sort of point where a hero that's higher level than the villain, like the main villain at least, right?
Yeah.
Because theoretically, if your hero's fighting like a main bad guy who's lower level than them, they could just dominate them, right?
Yeah.
Or like at least if it doesn't start in combat, right? If there's like sort of like
Yeah.
conflict, if they're given a moment of just like neutrality, they could abuse that.
Mhm.
So it really kind of
Another
depends on the
thing.
director to sort of balance that. Go on.
Mhm. Yeah, another thing is you noted that like sort of those core features are going to be stronger against like solos than hordes or minions. And like again, this is probably something that you can capture with the on the ability side of things. But an ability that just like takes over a minion squad. They're your
Yeah.
minions now.
Yeah, I definitely imagine those things are very tied to abilities. Like in my mind,
Hmm.
I didn't think I should make a whole new set of abilities because there are some abilities that work really well for that fantasy in telepathy. So I was thinking maybe just adding an extra ability per level or two. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that? Just being someone who
I
sort of
mean,
designs more subclasses.
yeah. I mean, so my personal inclination is like, or rather, the way I do it is I just make two new bespoke abilities that are tied to the class, and
Mhm.
then maybe there's a little bit of thematic overlap with the telepathy traditions. If you're keeping the telepathy tradition abilities, I think you only need one at each level.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Cool.
Yeah.
Like I always love whenever a something gives you a new downtime activity. I think it's this really,
Hmm.
really fun design space. So I was really happy when I realized, wait, I could tie the idea of like full domination into a downtime activity. To be really fun, right? I guess if let me just say if I were to expand upon this, I think yeah, the main thing is add new abilities. So I've worked some other subclasses, like I made a thief subclass or a shadow rather that is really tied into the idea of having like an echo, like very similar like the Echo Knight from 5e, and I'd probably tie those together if I were to release these, right? Almost like a yeah, it's similar to what you did, except probably less comprehensive. But yeah, that's probably what I would do. I guess any last questions about my sort of design or in regards to anything on
Mm,
my project?
I don't think I have any.
Okay, awesome. And any questions from you, Tamlin?
No, I'm eager to
Awesome.
see what Will,
I am too.
what we bullied Will into making with the cozy
Yeah,
fantasy.
Will. I am so excited to see what you made. For context, my prompt was cozy fantasy, and Will does not like cozy fantasy, or at least is not a fan.
For for everyone listening to this, well, while Jacob was saying that, I was shaking my head and glaring at him. So just
Yeah, I'm so curious what you made with this.
all right. Well, it's not much, and that's because I spent the intervening week racking my brain of what to do with cozy fantasy. I had no ideas, and I finally decided what I wanted to do is I wanted to find a way to be able to have cozy fantasy inside a larger, like more generic fantasy world. Like
Okay.
I wanted to be able to have like a town where people could go and have like you could have your like 1 or 2 sessions of doing like some fun cozy fantasy stuff, and then you could go back to playing, draw standard D&D, draw steel, fair. So to that end, the main thing I made was the Tyrant's Bane downtime project, which is a ritual. It requires the blade or armor of a defeated tyrant. The project cost is a whopping 5,000 because this is supposed to be like a big it's a big ritual. It covers a whole it covers 10 square miles. I was kind of taking some inspiration from, I don't know if either of you are familiar with Exalted, the game line by White Wolf, but they have one of the things Exalted Third Edition has is these things called Sorceress Workings, which are these big giant rituals, and some of the higher level ones can be things like you do these like giant things that cover a whole area. So that was kind of my inspiration. So source is text or lore in the first language because it's language of magic, and I thought for like I'm imagining this as like a big ancient, almost lost to time magic ritual. Characteristics, presence, reason, or intellect, because I liked the idea of not being able to overcome these tyrants physically and having to like think around the problem essentially.
Yeah.
And so the effect is this ritual covers an area of up to 10 square miles with an aura that prevents violence except in self-defense. Additionally, the land under this aura is more bountiful and will produce more food, and people will generally find easy access to all the things they need to sustain themselves. People who enter the aura can feel that they have done so and gain some intuitive understanding of the aura's effects. I don't imagine they probably don't understand, like it's an intuitive understanding. I don't know how I would exactly play that in at the table. I guess at the table I probably just read out to them their effects and be like, your character kind of like can feel that this is true. The ritual lasts for 100 years and a day before it fades. It can be the item that you use can be reused for subsequent castings of the ritual, so it kind of becomes like almost like I'm imagining it becoming like a relic for this town or whatever that is using it. So they have this like central relic that is important to keeping the whole thing working, and to kind of play into that so that you could maybe really use this in a pre-existing fantasy world. If the item is destroyed or removed from the ritual's area, the ritual ends. So
That's cool.
you could run like a game of like trying to rebuild this like cozy fantasy place that maybe, some master thief has stolen this for some, malfeasant reason. And then because I
I
felt
do
like,
think
go ahead.
I do love how much sort of this thing just sort of promotes like ventures, right? It's I think often with cozy fantasy, it's like it's not, you shouldn't think of it as like almost a permanent, like, oh, no drama at all, not at all. This is almost a cozy fantasy in a way that promotes stories, right? It promotes these sort of like with the idea of like it being removed, it stops. 100 years isn't too long, right? To some of these like get like refine the lore, like it's some good elements here that could be good for a story.
That was one of my big. I'm glad you said that because that was one of my big goals. Was I was like, okay, I don't really know what to do with cozy fantasy, but whatever I do with it, I want there to be adventure hooks that don't necessarily require violence because I feel like that's really not the cozy fantasy idea. But given just the system that it's being made for, you also could take in that direction. Kind of depending on how cozy you want things to be.
One
Go
adding to it, like again, sorry, is in that. So a big thing is again in sort of the main sort of draw steel setting, right? The whole thing is like, hey, there's a tyrant going around. They're doing stuff,
Yeah.
killing, like they kill all like the barons, right? What if there's like a capital of like a baron need to still has their baron because they couldn't physically kill him, right? And it's like at that point, what does Ajax do, right?
That's why
how do you?
That's why I named it Tyrant's Bane and that's one of the reasons I changed it from just blade to blade or armor because I was looking through the monster book earlier and I realized Ajax has this like very striking golden armor.
Yeah. Like it's almost like a Casablanca-esque thing where like you probably find like a lot of people in there, right? Because they can't physically stop like age like warlocks from entering, right? It's just like they can't do anything, right?
Yeah.
It's cool.
I started writing just a little bit because I was like, okay, that's cool. A little downtime project. Well, not little. It's a big project, but a downtime project is cool, and it's got some fun hooks. And I was like, okay, I didn't get very far into this, but I was like, I want people to have more. So I'm going to design a town that is that you could just like put into your game that already has this happening.
Hmm.
So I have come up with a little bit of the story of the town of Halbeck, which is an idyllic town hidden in the mountains. I didn't want to name any specific mountains, but just wherever in your world, whether you're playing in Orden or somewhere else in the timescape, there are mountains, or even not mountains. I guess another reasonable place works. You think this town could be hidden? The town, weirdly, its walls cover that entire like 10 square mile area. They've realized kind of exactly the problem you were alluding to, Jacob, of like, oh, you can't stop someone from coming in here. But since their walls are less needed for defensive things, it's mostly like a literal cordon to allow them to keep people out if they don't want to let them in. Uh, and because of like the magic that makes things better, its harvests are prosperous enough that it can basically the people inside can just grow gardens and feed themselves with it, which I just think
Yeah.
is fun. And it has wells within the walls, so basically it's not really siegeable because of the way like the magic provides for the inhabitants inside. Um,
Yeah.
but because of like this, the town is very careful about welcoming outsiders, even on a temporary basis. They're very hesitant to really let anyone in. And I can't imagine like maybe the impetus for them letting these heroes in is, maybe that 100 years in a day is coming up soon and they need people who can redo it, or maybe somebody's been tampering with the item or something and they need these people to help them. And then that could cause some interesting. I'm imagining that would cause interesting friction inside the community.
I will say my subclass to have a field day here, right? No violent intentions. All the all the dominating they won.
No, I
Yeah.
I think the dominating would 100% count as a violent action. It's not only about physical violence. Um, so despite its relative safety, Halbeck does maintain like a voluntary military force, so like a militia essentially. Uh, and I thought it was funny to add in that ironically they have to practice outside of the town's walls. They can't like
Mhm.
spar each other inside the town, which I imagine they find like kind of annoying. And my favorite like plot hooks that I put in here actually is that the town's aura is connected to and sustained by a magical blade, and that blade is called Dances Along the Water's Surface. I don't know why it's called that, but which I think could be like the fun world building and like adventure hook is like, okay, what is the history of this elven blade? Like it's got a name. It's not just, a mystical elven blade.
Yeah.
It's a named blade. That was
Not just
taken.
any name, it's like an elven name, right? It's like
Yeah, I
like
guess
like a name of like
it's a draw steel elven name, I guess. Yeah. I did not do that on purpose.
Mhm.
I wish I could say I had.
it's like is it an intelligent weapon? Who knows?
Maybe. Yeah. And there is an elven conqueror who failed to take their community in the past, and that's where they got the blade from. But I explicitly didn't want to say that they had slain the Elven Conqueror because I think it could be cool
Mm.
if potentially that Elven Conqueror is still out there.
Yeah.
Mm.
So yeah,
So one of the things that I find absolutely fascinating about this, so Will, you're not really like familiar with Drostiel, right?
that is correct.
And specifically, you also aren't familiar with the Timescape or any of the deep lore of Orden or anything like that. Yeah.
Mhm. Yep. Well,
So
I'm mildly familiar with some of the lore of Orden from uh, other stuff of Matt's.
well, so are you familiar with sort of like when like the sort of original races of Orden and how when they were created they each brought something to the world?
Oh,
Generally, yes.
Yeah,
that's very fun.
so yeah, the elves were the first one. But like when the dwarves created, they brought the concept of time, and before then, that didn't exist. And specifically, when humans were brought into the world of Orden, they brought the concept of war.
Oh. Oh. That's really
I will also
interesting.
say
Yeah,
there was an
and
elven saint. Oh, sorry.
yes, I'm about to get there. Ripples of Honey on a
Yeah.
Shore of Gold was an elven saint known as the War Killer, who was a diplomat of legend, who served as an emissary between the humans and dragons when a war was brewing, and was able to broker peace for many years, though could not stem the tides of war forever. And she had sought to pen a codex, a book of great magical power which changes the rules of the world by being written. Specifically, the Codex Pax Universalis, which would banish the concept of war from Orden. However, realized that the only way to realize this great work would be the complete destruction of humans, and could not finish it, relinquished her work, refused to complete it.
All right. I love that. That's one of the item prerequisites now. You need an excerpt from the incomplete
Yeah,
Pax Universalis.
Yes,
it's amazing.
and
I also say,
I no go for it.
sorry, does it specify? Like, I know it alludes to it, right? It's like, but I don't think it specifies that it is getting rid of humans. But I think it's like it's basically heavily uh assumed, right? Or am I wrong?
It's not specified in the book. Matt has stated so in some of his live streams
Okay.
that that's what the final step was.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it would be a bit of delicious irony if this Elvis conqueror was someone who thought the Codex Pax Universalis should be completed, and
They're a
so
student
um,
of the saint.
in
What's that?
yeah, so in their efforts to try to eliminate humanity, they end up uh, creating this sort of this bastion against war. With knowledge that they had that was taken from them at their defeat.
Oh, I love that. That's really cool.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, no, I didn't think about that. That's really cool. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, so just the way that this all comes together, and like that you specifically picked a high elf name for the the blade of this.
Yeah,
That it just I know, it's just beautiful to me, like the coincidence in the way that it all comes together so perfectly.
That is really funny. It's
I've
also
seen
funny
it.
because I didn't choose like a high elf name. I chose it's a I kind of actually based it on how some Earth Dawn naming conventions, and
Oh,
I
interesting.
only
Wait,
realized
actually,
afterwards that it was like very in line with high elf names. Yeah, I right now I'm playing in an Earth Dawn game where we have been hired by there's a race in Earth Dawn called the Skrang, which are lizard people. Um, and we've been hired by this group of Skrang called I think they're called Laughter in the Waters. So that's like
mhm.
what
Mhm.
that was my starting point for like naming this sword. Was I took Laughter in the Waters and I was like, okay, what can I do with that? I was like, I like that name, but I don't just want to steal the name that my Earth Dawn GM made. So
I see you added it. PAX Universe. Oh, that's great.
oh yeah, no, I wasn't joking. When I said that's one of the item prerequisites now, I meant I wrote that down. Like it's in
Oh,
there.
you could make it. You could make it a source.
Could I make it a source?
Yeah, because it sources any sort of
Yeah.
lore, right? It could be something
That's
specific.
fair.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah, let's
No,
just
a
take that.
lot of the time they're sort of yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't aware
General,
of
A
the
lot of
this
the
makes
time
a lot
stuff
of
they're
sense
being
for
supposed to be.
specific. Yeah.
Mhm.
This is real. I want to write an adventure now set in the city, right, and maybe like based around sort of the sort of codex, right? Because I think Mass talked about how codexes aren't really meant to be accessible via like the players as like standard magic items, right? They are campaign
Mhm.
altering, and if gamed, it should be transient in that way. And I think this is sort of a way like, hey, because so this isn't even the full codex, and yet still it has a sort of great power to it,
Yeah,
right?
I love that. I would love to expand on this and make it into like a whole like little setting with like an adventure or maybe a couple small adventures tied to it. I think it'd be really fun.
I will. Additionally, just so you know, Tamwin, just from this podcast, I can't tell you how many times we've made something like we want to expand upon this at some point. Right? It's such a good
Mhm.
idea generator, like for things we can make and like release out there. Um,
Uh, I mean, I think that's sort of what's going to happen when you do brainstorms and prompts and stuff is you're going to get an idea that like a seed from somebody else that's not the way you thought, makes you think in different directions, and
Yeah.
then once you start working on something new, the urge to keep going at it is there.
Yeah, like I the I loved Paul who we had on last episode's prompt so much and I couldn't complete what I did with it that I'm super eager to like expand upon that just as it's something I probably wouldn't have thought to make myself, but I loved it the second he said it like so much. Also, I've just had a wonderful epiphany. I don't know what their name is yet, but I think that Elven Conqueror, I think their name and the Blade's name are like two halves of a full Elven name.
ooh, that's
So
Mm.
cool.
because like dances along the water surface is kind of an elven name, but it's to me at least I feel like it's missing a little bit.
Yeah,
Like it,
Mhm.
so I'd love to make this elven conqueror have the other half of that
give
name, and
him some
Yeah.
lore.
yeah, give them some
Well,
lore.
so creating high elf names is actually something that like I fell in love with doing just with like how their names work. Um, I have at this point like what will happen is I'll come up with a random idea for a high elf name and I just like post it in the Timescape channel as just a random name. And the two main concepts about the way high elf names work is they're not something that you can like that can you can take literally that can actually happen. There's some sort of paradox intrinsic to it. Um, and then also generally they tend to be dealing with nature and emotion and
Mhm.
feeling.
Yeah,
Um, so that
I
so
mean,
both of these like they're not necessarily hard rules like, but they're generally following. If they break one, they tend to follow the other, and it's you kind of want the vibes of those rules even if you don't strictly follow them.
yeah.
well,
So with that, the last sort of thing being sort of shown off. Tamwin, I hope you had a good time being a guest on our show.
Oh, for sure. No, definitely. It was great. It was great being here. It was great doing this. I enjoyed it.
Awesome. Can you tell us where can people find you? Maybe what things you want to sort of promote as well?
Yeah. So I'm not super active on the socials, as it were. I need to create a Blue Sky account. I need to create an itch page. For the time being, I'm just hanging out in the MCDM Discord, um, where I'm was pretty active in the homebrew channels. If you make something and post it there, there's a good chance I'll comment on it. Um, Actually, I think the place I will shout out is there's actually a Draw Steel homebrew Discord that's separate from the main MCM Discord, where I hang out with a bunch of other folks who are really invested in the game, and that's also where I do my regular testing and stuff. So if you'd like to help test stuff, or you have something you'd like to test, definitely come by, and we'd be happy to help out with that.
Is that the Joshua Brewery?
Yeah, are you in it?
Yes. Fingers rubs in it.
Yeah.
Try to be in all like the various places where the Draw Steel community is basically propagated from. Into.
You heard it, folks. Jacob's everywhere. Watch out.
I try to be. You better watch out. Well, again, thank you to Tamwin. I think this
Yes,
is so much
thank
fun,
you
and
so
I'm
much.
definitely going to reach out to you for design advice because I really have a subclass I want to release soon, and I think I may want to get your opinion on it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I'm looking forward to it.
I don't know how much experience you have making monsters, but definitely I would. If you have advice for it, I definitely will reach out to you about that because I'm not good at making monsters.
So
I
Will,
mean,
where
aren't
can you find?
we? I was just gonna say, aren't we the real monsters?
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's what. No, I'm not doing that bit. Never mind.
And of that realization, Will, where can you find our monstrous selves?
Well, you can find us on YouTube, Blue Sky, Discord, itch.io. All of those under the Psychogenic Press. We might technically have a Facebook. I don't remember.
Yes, and we also didn't have a Patreon, although there's nothing on it yet. So
Oh, I, I hadn't remembered we had. Apparently, we have a Patreon. Go give us money. Is that how that works? Don't give us money. We don't have anything to give you right now.
I don't recommend it yet. Yeah, later. Keep in mind, I guess.
Also,
Don't go in yet.
don't give us money because then I have to figure out how taxes work. But yeah, you can find us on any of those under the Psychogenic Press. We're always happy to interact with new people. If you have questions, comments, concerns, ideas, we'd love to hear from you. I think we have an email if you want to email us at psychogenicpress@gmail.com. And I
No one has
believe
done it yet.
yeah, we still have an open offer for the first person to email us. Well, I don't know if it's just the first person, but if you email us and you want us to read out your questions, comments, or concerns on the podcast, we'll do so.
Yeah. Also, there's also an open offer, I believe, from Will to fist fight anyone who could find him. So,
Yeah. If you show up at my door, I promise I will fist fight you. I am honor bound to do so. In fact.
Yeah. Well, we'll see you all. Oh, one more thing I want to point out. Recently, we've actually been doing live streams as well.
Yes, we did start doing some live streams over on YouTube, which who knows, we may eventually expand that to other platforms. But we reviewed the first issue of the Ratcatchers zine.
Yes. And we have plans, which will probably have come to fruition by the time you get this episode.
Yeah, quite.
So keep an eye out.
Hopefully.
Again, thank you all for watching. Like and subscribe, as the YouTube words must be said. See you all next time.
Yeah, bye.